Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Part 2. Lesson 1. The rich don't work for money. The first and most fundamental lesson that Rich Dad taught Robert and Mike is a revolutionary statement, completely contrary to what society usually assumes. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. This lesson was not taught through a dry lecture, but through a real-life experience, a push from life orchestrated by Rich Dad himself. The story begins when Robert was 9 years old. After being excluded by his wealthy friends for being a poor kid, Robert came home with an innocent but eager question. "Dad, how do I get rich?" His poor dad, with all his love but also with the limitations of his financial mindset, could only offer a generic piece of advice. "Use your head, son." Undeterred, Robert went to his best friend, Mike, and they decided to become business partners. Their first idea, though very creative for two 9-year-old boys, was a complete failure. They decided to make money by collecting old toothpaste tubes, made of lead at the time, melting them down, and casting them into nickels. When Poor Dad discovered their production line, he gently explained to the boys that their actions were illegal, that they were counterfeiting. Their dream of getting rich quick was shattered. It was in that moment of disappointment that Poor Dad gave a fateful piece of advice. "If you want to learn how to get rich, go ask Mike's dad." Mike's dad, whom Robert later called Rich Dad, was a successful entrepreneur building a business empire. When Robert and Mike approached him, he made an unusual offer. "I'll teach you, but not in a classroom style. You work for me, I'll teach you. If you don't, I won't." He offered to pay the two boys 10 cents an hour to dust cans in one of his small supermarkets for 3 hours every Saturday. The extremely boring work and the meager pay, 30 cents after 3 weeks of work, quickly discouraged Robert. He felt cheated and decided to quit. This was the moment the real lesson began. Rich Dad had anticipated this. When Robert confronted him, with all the anger of a child, he blurted out accusations. "You didn't keep your promise. You're a greedy man." Rich Dad, instead of getting angry, smiled and said, "Not bad. In less than a month, you sound like most of my employees." He explained that he was teaching Robert, but not with words. Life doesn't talk to you. It just pushes you around. Each push is life saying, "Wake up. There's something I want you to learn." He pointed out that most people let life push them around. They never stop to learn from those pushes. Instead, they react with anger, blaming their boss, their job, or seeking a new job with a higher salary, thinking that money will solve the problem. But in reality, they are just running in an invisible trap that Rich Dad called the rat race. This trap is driven by two primal human emotions, fear and greed. The fear of not having money, of not being able to pay bills, forces us to wake up every morning and go to work. When we receive our paycheck, greed and desire kick in, prompting us to dream about all the wonderful things we can buy. And so their lives are controlled by an endless loop. Wake up, go to work, pay bills. They become slaves to money. To break this cycle, Rich Dad did something drastic. He announced he would no longer pay the boys. "You want to learn how not to work for money, so I'm not going to pay you." Despite feeling it was very unfair, Robert and Mike continued to work for free. It was during this period, no longer obsessed with waiting for their paltry coins, that their minds began to open up. They were forced to think, observe, and look for opportunities. The opportunity came when Robert noticed the store manager, Mrs. Martin, tearing off the front half of the covers of old comic books to return to the distributor for credit, while throwing the rest of the book away. An idea sparked. The two boys asked for the discarded comic books and opened a comic book library in Mike's basement. They charged a 10-cent admission fee. The business boomed, earning them an average of $9.50 a week, a figure far greater than their 10-cent an hour wage. That was the aha moment. By not getting paid, they were forced to use their minds to create money from an opportunity others had missed. They had created a system, a money-making machine for themselves. That machine worked even when they weren't there. Money had started working for them. Rich Dad didn't give them money. but he gave them a lesson worth many times more. He taught them how to escape the mindset of an employee, the mindset of working for money, and to start thinking like a rich person, the mindset of making money work for them. This was the first and most solid foundation on the path to financial freedom. Lesson 2. Why teach financial literacy? After the first lesson on making money work for them, Rich Dad guided Robert and Mike to a second foundational concept, a rule he considered the most important for building wealth. You must know the difference between an asset and a liability, and buy assets. This is the heart of financial education, the core difference in the mindset of the rich compared to the poor and middle class. The author emphasizes that, although this rule sounds absurdly simple, most people do not truly understand and apply it. This lack of understanding is the root cause of the financial struggles many people face. Rich Dad defined assets and liabilities in an extremely simple and intuitive way, without using complex accounting terms. An asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. A liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. To illustrate, he used simple cash flow diagrams. Cash flow tells the story of how a person manages their money. 1. The cash flow of the poor. They have a single source of income from their job, salary. All of this money then flows directly out through the expense column: taxes, rent, food, transportation. They have no real assets to generate additional income. Their cash flow is a one-way street. Money in, then money out, with nothing left to grow. 2. The cash flow of the middle class. Similar to the poor, their main source of income is their salary. However, as their income increases, they tend to buy things they think are assets, but are actually liabilities. The biggest and most common liability is the house they live in. They buy a house with a mortgage, and every month, money flows out of their pockets to pay the bank, property taxes, insurance, maintenance costs. In addition, they buy cars on credit, accumulate credit card debt, and other consumer loans. Their cash flow gets stuck in the rat race. They go to work to earn money, then use that money to pay for their ever-growing liabilities. They work harder, get promotions, and earn raises, only to buy a bigger house, a more expensive car, and the trap of debt tightens. 3. The cash flow of the rich. The rich focus on building their asset column. They use their income to buy real assets, things that generate positive cash flow. These assets include rental properties, generating monthly income; stocks, generating dividends; bonds, generating interest; intellectual property, book royalties, music rights, generating royalties; businesses that do not require their presence. The cash flow from this asset column is then used to cover living expenses. The rest is reinvested to buy more assets. Thus, their asset column grows stronger, creating a virtuous cycle of prosperity. The cash flow into their pockets increases, making them richer, even when they don't need to work. This is the scenario of money making money. One of the most controversial yet profound points in this chapter is Rich Dad's view on housing. While most people, including Poor Dad, believe that our house is our biggest asset, as Rich Dad asserted, your house is a liability. He explained that the house you live in doesn't put money in your pocket. On the contrary, it constantly takes money out of your pocket through various expenses. Pouring all your money into a large house, instead of investing in income-producing assets, is one of the biggest financial mistakes of the middle class. It costs them time, precious years when other assets could have been growing. Additional capital, money that could have been invested, is instead used to pay for housing-related expenses. Learning opportunities. Because they have no surplus money to invest, they never gain investment experience, never becoming what is known as sophisticated investors. Kiyosaki isn't saying you shouldn't buy a house. He just emphasizes that you must understand the difference. Build your asset column first, so that the cash flow from your assets can pay for your dream house. Finally, this lesson asserts that wealth is not measured by how much money you make, but by how much money you keep and how you make that money grow. Financial intelligence is not about learning how to make money, but about learning how to manage money, distinguishing between assets and liabilities. and focusing all efforts on building a solid asset column. This is the foundation of financial freedom, the only way to escape the rat race and let money truly serve you.